Okay, I think we are going to go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for coming today. Welcome to the Mixed Immersive Experience Design and Extended Realities panel series. My name is Mikhail Kamener. I will be moderating this panel today and asking questions to engage in discussions amongst our panelists regarding sound and immersive experience. Together, we will be exploring the capabilities, benefits, and methods of implementing spatial audio within extended reality experiences. We have an amazing team here this morning, all coming from a diverse set of perspectives ranging from spatial audio design to extended reality and user experience development. Through this morning's sessions, we'll focus on practical insights and accessible approaches to implementing spatial audio into immersive experiences, hopefully allowing for everyone, especially those that are new to the audio field, to grasp these powerful concepts which can serve to enhance immersion in any experience. Quickly, I would like to introduce our panelists. So let's begin by introducing and discovering the diverse backgrounds that have shaped their understanding and application of spatial audio in the evolving landscape of extended reality and experience design. Starting with Sriraj.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sriraj Rajkumar. I come from a UX design background, and I also produce and compose music. And here, I work with VR experiences, integrating spatial audio into the VR experience. And yeah, that's what I do.
There we go. Hello, I'm Jesus. I have a background in XR development, so I will be mostly talking about my perspective in kind of like games or game engines. Yeah.
My name is Lydia Cabasco. My background is in learning experience design and instructional design. I am a graduate student here at the Mix in XR design and build in Unreal Engine and have done AR in Adobe Aero.
Hi, I'm Michael Shaughnessy. My primary experience is in XR design. That's kind of what I do on a day-to-day. But I also have experience with installations, film, music, which is something I have in common with everyone on this panel. We're all musicians. But yeah, and I'm an undergrad student in media arts and sciences. So yeah, that's it for me.
My name is Mikhail. I'm going to be moderating this panel today. I'm a first semester graduate student in media arts and sciences, extended reality technologies. I have a background in spatial audio design, especially with ambisonics. I also have some experience with signal programming, specifically audio signal programming, in addition to some XR design implemented through game engine and installation environments. So, before we begin our discussion, I'd like to start us off with a brief description of some of the terms that you'll be hearing throughout our panel, as they may be used interchangeably, and we want to ensure that everyone here in the audience has a sense of what each of the terms may mean as they're tossed around within our talks. So firstly, I would like to talk a little bit about what spatial audio is. So spatial audio, or immersive audio surround sound, encompasses a wide array of technologies that aim to expand the dimensions of the auditory field and increase sense of immersion. This technology utilizes a wide array of hardware and software components that work together to create immersive and three-dimensional auditory experiences. Some of the most popular implementations may include Dolby Atmos, Sony 360, as well as Apple's products such as AirPod Pros and Maxes. They have spatialization features of their own. There are, however, many subcategories and differences between each of these different technologies within the spatial audio field, such as ambisonics, binaural, and Dolby Atmos, all having unique approaches to their use cases and workflows. Hopefully, we'll help to clarify some of these differences between these technologies throughout our discussions. Before we get into any further descriptions and definitions, we have a quick demo of a Dolby Atmos system that is right here in the screening theater, so everyone here can have a brief demonstration of exactly what spatial audio sounds like. Awesome. Thank you. So hopefully everyone here got a little bit of an idea of how that spatial audio demonstration kind of immersed us in the sound here. So not only that left-right kind of panning idea, but movement back and forth, as well as some what do you call that? Multi-dimensional height movement, I suppose you could say. So that differs greatly from a standard stereo field. Our next description that relates to the rest of this panel series that you may hear quite a bit here at the Mix Center now is extended reality. Extended reality, or often abbreviated to XR, is also an umbrella term that encompasses many designed experiences and technologies that immerse audiences through blending physical and virtual realities. Some other terms you may often hear under this umbrella term include VR, which is virtual reality, AR for augmented reality, and MR for mixed reality, all relating to varying levels of immersion. So let's go ahead and get started with some of our questions here. Our first question, how does spatial audio differ between use cases for fields such as film, gaming, music, installations, or other mediums? I think we'd like to start with Sriraj for this first question.
Sure. So, in case of the film or cinematic VR, it's more like a shared experience among the audience where like we enhance the realism and immerse viewers in the story without pulling focus from the visuals, or the sound must take over into the visual narrative. Similarly, gaming experience, it's gaming often like relies on a more real-time spatial audio, which responds to the both character movements and environmental cues. So gaming is more it's an individual experience. So like the workflow and then that how we deliver those audios has to be something that we have to keep in mind as a creator, because a lot of gamers use like headphones, and then we need to look for exporting our audios in using binaural audio or multi-channel formats. So there are like different formats and workflows that one has to consider, but then all of them has a very similar way of creating the experience for the users.
Specifically for virtual reality, the cool thing about spatialized audio in game engines is that usually comes like hand in hand with your typical audio development. So that means like setting up like different areas which have like different sound profiles, like reverb zones or low pass filters. And then you just add a plugin and just run all the sound through the plugin, and then it gets spatialized magically through the magic of technology. But yeah, compared to at least like the other mediums like film or the other medias, it's generally easier to implement spatialized audio in game engines. So I think that's a good place to start if you're looking to start somewhere.
I want to offer some questions to consider through a few of the different media listed in the question. So film, how can you create a richer narrative experience by carefully positioning sound to guide your end user's attention? And another consideration is how ultimately are they going to experience the audio? Will it be through headphones, a soundbar, a surround sound system? Will it have Dolby Atmos, right? Regarding music, where does the listener experience hearing different tracks of the music? In terms of spatial sound, will the vocals come from the front, maybe bass from below, synthesizer floating above, maybe reverb is coming from behind? And then regarding gaming, there's head-tracked spatial audio, so audio coming from specific directions based on head movements. So these are all different use cases and considerations for these different type of media. And will your gamer audience be using a headset or headphones? So those are some considerations there.
Yeah, so in thinking about how they differ from each other, I actually think it's important to start with how similar they actually are. So, for example, with both film and music, you often use the same system, the Dolby Atmos system, which is what's called an object-based system. So, really good way to think about that is imagine like my fist here is an audio object, like a speaker. And wherever this is, you will hear audio emanating from it, like you're hearing my voice right now. So I could have it right here, and then I could tell the program, I want to ping this source all the way over to the other corner of the room, and you'd hear it over there instead. That's kind of how these multi-channel configurations work. You can hear this one object from anywhere in the room. So while physically you can have I think this is like a 714 system in here. Virtually, you have way more objects to work with. So that's going to be in both film and music. For XR, or game development, it's actually a very similar process. You're just not necessarily using Atmos for it. Instead, you're using, in my case, I usually use Unity Engine for it. So in Unity Engine, just like you would place a cube in your scene, a 3D object, you can also place an audio object, same way you would with Atmos, and you can place it anywhere you want in the world. So in explaining how similar they are, we can also get into how different they can be, because it's not necessarily a difference in approach, but more a difference in end goal. For film, you're usually trying to immerse the person in a story that they are not taking part in. They are watching it happen. So the things that you do are often going to be around trying to make the story elements pop, but not so much make the person feel like they're really there. Whereas with XR, it's a different approach. You're trying to make the person feel like they are an active participant. So that may impact where you choose to place things, what types of sound effects you use.
Thank you. Just to add on to that, there are, of course, so many different variations and kind of like subdivisions of different spatial audio technologies, hardware setups, softwares that you can use. My specific experience really involves ambisonics, which differs a little bit from the object-based orientation or object-based spatial audio that Michael had described. It is more scene-based, so there is a very specific or optimal listener position, sort of a sweet spot, so to speak. So schools such as AME over in Tempe, we have in the Stauffer building the geodesic ambisonic dome, which is essentially not too dissimilar from those playground domes that you see, but it's scaled up to about 30 feet, has about 36 speakers, 6 more speakers on the ground, and I think about 3 subwoofers. And you have to be in the very center of that dome to really get the optimal listener position. Whereas in a setup such as Dolby Atmos, as well as some other proprietary softwares and hardware setups, so I think Spatial Studio also, they intend for the use case and their users to have a optimal listener position anywhere within that space. So it really depends on what that use is going to be for. So for film, obviously a huge theater type screening room, it would be optimal if everybody had the same exact auditory experience. And same for in Spatial Studios, they primarily market their services to clientele such as offices, healthcare centers, stuff like that, where people are often going to be walking through corridors, being anywhere within that space, not necessarily just staying in one optimal listener position. So I'd like to move on to our next question, which gets into how can spatial audio be utilized to enhance the overall experience of other immersive media? I think we're going to bounce that right back to Michael to start us off.
All right. All right, so what's the question? How can spatial audio enhance the overall experience? Yeah, so what I think is interesting about spatial audio is that probably the best way to think about it is in terms of 3D audio. So what's very convenient about 3D audio is that we all exist in the 3D world already. We're very used to designing for 3D and living in 3D because we're all here already. So the cool thing about 3D audio is it is basically a one-to-one experience with how you would hear sound in the real world. That's why it increases your immersion so much, because it feels real, because in a way it is real. So when you're thinking about, how can I use this to enhance my experiences, what you're really doing is adding a layer of reality to your experience. And what's cool about that is that you can start on a basis of, oh, this feels very real, so it's going to make my experience feel more real, and then you can take that in different creative directions. Because if it already kind of feels real, then you get to play with that a lot. It helps the audience's suspension of disbelief if something feels real already. So then you can make stuff that definitely isn't real at all with that, and it'll still feel that way. I think that's a cool way to use it.
So it allows your audience to feel like they're in a realistic soundscape, as Michael said, but also they're perceiving sounds from different locations. So they're literally being placed within the virtual environment that you're creating.
In terms of games again, just being able to hear audio like as if you would like one-to-one like in real life, that makes it easier for people to kind of map the environment in their brains subconsciously. It's just like you can tell where things are off screen. And in the case for multiplayer games, like that can give you like an advantage over other people who don't have that same audio setup. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a multiplayer game. Like even if it's single player, just the added immersion just adds to the experience, and that's always a good thing. Oh, Suraj.
Yeah. So, as sound designers, we are not just adding audio. Like, I feel like we are crafting an audible reality, like a 3D world of its own. And spatial audio simplifies those complex environment by, providing navigational guidelines. Um, and making it easier for users to explore large scenes without getting lost or overwhelmed. Sound just like it becomes like a compass, or like letting creators direct focus and movement. This is where like the creators could take control where the users look or move within a larger scene. So uh, just like I feel spatial audio helps in that way and gives that power for the creator to help users navigate in that. Yeah.
Thank you. I often do perceive spatial audio and its benefits in adding to any immersive experience as sort of different world building tool that you can utilize to expand out what you already have. So in terms of film, we may be familiar with terms such as diegetic and non-diegetic sound. So diegetic in terms of film may pertain to sounds that are like on the screen or perceived by characters and the audience, where non-diegetic is things like themes or music that aren't necessarily pertained or like heard by the characters on the screen, but are only really relevant to the audience. So in terms like that, we can really utilize spatial audio to separate out those tracks in a multi-channel system so that you're maybe hearing music from one end of the theater and have that really detached from the actual like diegetic sound that is going on within the film. As said before, in terms of gaming, I don't know how many people were really in the scene back in the 2010s when I think Turtle Beach was one of the biggest headphone brands that was kind of like around the field. Everybody wanted one because it was so great at spatializing footsteps and really giving you the edge over your competitors, over your opponents, when you could hear where they're at just based on their footsteps and head tracking. So moving on, I would like to talk a little bit about how spatial audio can be implemented in pre-production as opposed to solely post-production. As we are all designers in our own rights, we often see a overlook of the audio within any design kind of like step by step, we may put audio off to the very end of the design. It really depends, again, on the use case. If it's, say, an XR project that focuses on the VR programming implementations, then audio may be an afterthought. But how do we kind of start shifting the narrative and thinking about audio in the pre-production phase? How can that have an impact on the rest of that design process? Could we start with Suraj for this one?
Sure. So definitely incorporating spatial audio during pre-production can greatly enhance the entire experience. I feel like introducing the entire audio team as early as possible does help a lot for the entire production. But for the audio team to get started with such production, like they do require a solid script or a storyboard, which is like a good place for to get direction for the audio person. And also, I feel like similar to a mood board that we create for the visual 3D experience, like that, like we could create a audio board or like a soundscape, like setting up the kind of sound that we are looking for, or like the soundscape, or like the genre of that entire experience. So um, for example, like usually in especially like making horror movies, sound designers are introduced to the pre-production stage because this particular genre of film are heavily based on audio and visuals. So we have to make sure like how we are going to bring in that experiences, and I feel that is very similar to that of the VR experience and spatial audio that we are working with.
Yeah, I'm pretty much thinking the same thing you are, Suraj. On starting like development with spatial audio in mind. That way, you can incorporate it more organically to the experience, as opposed to, I feel like if you do it after, it just feels a little, can feel a little forced if done wrong. But yeah, definitely doing it in tandem with like the narrative of the experience, kind of, I don't know, gets you thinking on how to use spatial audio more like playfully, like doing stuff that's like off screen that then goes into view, stuff like that.
I personally storyboard in my process. So for me, that's a good opportunity to identify audio assets early on. A lot of what I create is driven by music, so I often have the music picked out. If it's not, like a custom composed soundtrack, for example, I usually know what music I'm gonna incorporate in. So these are all good opportunities to figure out while storyboarding where your spatial audio is going to fit in your timeline. And then, for example, if there are birds chirping or nature sounds, you can then identify, do I want it to come from a certain direction? Should it start out at a certain volume and then decrease, or should it be low and then increase? These are all elements of spatial audio that you can incorporate and start thinking about early on.
Yeah, so I think this is a really important question because if you are a sound designer here, you've probably had the experience of someone coming to you and being like, I have a day before my project is due and it has absolutely no audio in it. Can you help me? And I mean, usually the answer is yes, I can help you. I can do something with you. But what I think you have to ask yourself, if you are a designer, if you are creating XR or film or whatever it may be, is are you allowing enough time for for audio to be its own art form within what you're doing? So if you, instead of doing it very late stage, post-production, that's the first time you think about audio, thinking about it in pre-production, that can be really good for you. So like that means to me, you provide a script to your audio person very early on. You provide storyboards as you go, and concept art and things like that. And what they can actually do is start taking your storyboards, your concepts, your script, and thinking about what they want to design for it. They can think about, do we need any field recording sessions? Do we need to, go out and make new sounds for this before we even reach post-production? One example I really like to use is in Star Wars. There are so many iconic sounds in that movie. R2-D2 especially comes to mind, and that's a process that started very early on. They had concept art of R2-D2. They knew they would have a little robot guy wheeling around, and they had a sound designer start thinking about what he would sound like, how they could make him expressive, what synthesizers to use. And really what that does is it brings your character to life and it brings the story to life. So thinking about it very early on, you're going to end up with a much better end result than if you wait to the last minute. Either way, you'll probably have audio, but it will be audio that really enhances your art if you start it early on in the process.
Thank you. I completely agree with everything Michael just said as well. Speaking from my perspective and my experience, I believe that spatial audio and audio in general can be both intrinsic and supplemental to any design process. So with my project specifically, I may look into both 3D design and implementation within game engines as well as audio implementation. And when starting the kind of cross-collaboration early on in that design process, I find that both the visual and the auditory kind of additions to that project can really start bouncing off of each other. So I may not have well-developed ideas for what something should sound like, but once I kind of get that visualization, that will drive some of the inspiration or the ideas that I have going on for that audio. Or it may help other team members, if it's a collaborative project, to get a sense of, okay, now I know what we're really trying to shoot for in terms of what that soundscape should be like. What are some sound effects that would be really impactful or relevant to the script or to this world building? And vice versa. If you start with that sound design process, sometimes just having the sound of something can really drive the visuals. It can really inspire what that model or what that landscape should be like. Say, if you start implementing a specific reverb, that's going to give me a sense of how big this space should really be. Or on the other end of things, if you already have that space developed, say in an Unreal scenario, if you have a large enclosed space, you can actually start experimenting with some impulse response things that may relate directly to how large that space is. So now that we've kind of covered some of the definitions of spatial audio, what importance it holds within our design processes, I'd like to talk a little bit about what are some implementations that designers here, even if they don't have a audio background, can look into using themselves. What are some accessible resources really to use? I'd like to start again with Michael for this question.
Cool. So I would say the first thing that you should do as a designer if you're wanting to get into spatial audio is go out and experience it as much as you can. And while you're experiencing it, think about it in terms of like, let's say you go to a movie, for example. Usually movies at this point, they're going to be played in a surround sound system, oftentimes an Atmos system. You can go see Wicked, just came out, not a sponsor. And and you can think about, while you're in the movie, how are things placed in this scene? How is the panning done? Is anything coming from behind me? If so, why did they make that choice? And really start getting into an analysis of it. That's something I like to do on a regular basis. And then, once you've done that, you're probably going to be a little more comfortable with getting into some of these tools yourself. I will say there are a lot of very accessible, even free programs available to start doing this, and probably your best bet is to stick pretty close with whatever your discipline is at the moment. So if you are a filmmaker, start thinking about how can I apply spatial audio to my films to enhance them. If you are an XR creative developer, you're a game dev, then spatial audio is like a really normal thing in game dev. So think about how you can implement it there binaurally in headphones. yeah, wherever you live, wherever you exist creatively, think about how to apply it there using some of the skills that you already have and getting into some new ones.
There are different spatial audio softwares, which I haven't even begun to scratch the surface of, but like Audio Cube, for example, is one of them, and I don't know if Kel and Jesus and Michael, have used them.
Yeah, so if we're getting into different softwares, there's a really long list, but some that I'll just shout out real quick would be Spat Revolution we use in the Dome over at Stauffer. That's really good. Anything that includes Dolby Atmos is going to be great for you. So Pro Tools has that built in. You can use it in pretty much any major DAW at this point. Studio One, I think Logic now has Atmos coverage. And also, something we haven't gotten into a lot in this panel, but it's really important, is something called ambisonics. And what's cool about that is it allows you to pan sounds in a 360-degree space like a sphere. And there are a lot of free programs for that. I recommend checking out the IEM suite, which is totally free and really good place to get started. You can just put it into your DAW of choice and you're good.
I can only talk about one, which is the only one I've used, and I know Unreal has something similar, but for Unity, used to be called Oculus Spatializer plugin, but that's deprecated. Don't use it. Now it's I think it's Meta Audio SDK, and that has spatialization like built into it. So again, what's cool about it is that by default, Unity is already like an object-based, uses object-based audio, kind of like how Michael described earlier. So you place an object, give it an audio, you'll hear it. You'll hear the difference like on the left and right ear. But with the plugin, what the plugin does, it does like the extra calculations of the way how sound bouncing works in real life. So let's say Lydia or Michael say something. To me, automatically my brain will, I'll hear the audio first on my left ear, and then anything else, let's say it bounces like on the wall and then comes back, I'll hear on my right. Even this table, like it'll bounce on the table and then to me. So any very subtle thing like that, it helps your brain like know where things are placed. So the audio SDK does that for you automatically. Yeah.
Shriraj?
Oh, Shriraj.
Yeah. So I would say like if you can adjust the volume and know how to mute or unmute channels, like you're pretty much well equipped to handle any basic audio consoles or like to work with any of those audio parameters that we have in all the game engines like Unreal Engine or Unity. I would recommend to like since we majorly are using Unreal or Unity, like to just get started off with that and build something in spatial audio. Like even if you couldn't find a specific audio file or if you have some idea but then you just don't have those necessary audio, you can still use our mobile phone to record rough audio and then just put it in there and then just get started it, and later like we can get an audio person to refine and then make it much more better and work in layers. So I guess like they provide uh, this capabilities and opportunity for everyone to just get familiar and then just throw in ideas into our work and start just creating, because there's a lot of tools out there which are just there to help anyone. And I would highly encourage everybody to just like get started off something like that, and that will be a great place to learn.
Yeah, again, this is such a deep field that so many of these applications can have varying levels of complexity, but a few that I'm also familiar with, firstly, ICST Ambisonics plugin. That specifically I've used within Max MSP, the visual programming language. You can use that to connect through interfaces to multi-channel speaker formats and spatialize things just right there. There's also other more proprietary applications such as Spatial Studio. They're also a object-based sort of system. It is proprietary. You have to kind of purchase their system and have it set up. I'm not just plugging them because I did an internship for them, and they got to teach me a lot about how that kind of stuff works. They have a full kind of suite set up where when they are marketing these things to their clientele, they have like a training module, and they make it very user-friendly for people to just start plugging in sounds, spatialize them, and place them wherever in the space that they want them to be. Some other ones, binaural VSTs are all over the place. You can plug them into just about any DAW. I know for a lot of us, we're maybe familiar with Reaper, as that one is just kind of a build your own DAW. You can really just plug anything in there. Not everyone really has the money to build up a full Dolby Atmos system for several thousands of dollars in the Pro Tools rig there. So something like that can be very accessible and very easy to kind of pick up and learn, especially if you go to some YouTube University channels that can really teach you how to use those in depth. Some other things such as Unreal. Unreal provides very descriptive documentation throughout their website, especially as the aforementioned kind of meta sounds, attenuation features are really useful to start implementing in your scenes for spatial audio and getting that extra sense of immersion. But I think really that wraps up our questions for today's panel. So we are going to go ahead and move into the Q&A. If anybody in the audience has any questions for us.
Hi, so I guess my question is, what has been your guys' favorite spatial audio experience, whether it was a film, a game, or an immersive experience of some kind? I recently did see Wicked in the Cine XL with the Dolby Atmos sound, and it was really cool, so that's just what made me want to ask that question.
That's a good question. Anybody else have like an immediate answer? I think I need time to think. Okay. Michael?
One that definitely comes to mind for me was a couple years back, Metallica released their album 72 Seasons, and they had a big party for it at the Harkins Theater, and where they released it in Dolby Atmos, and that was like the first time hearing the album. I'm a huge Metallica fan, so hearing that first time through in just the best sound system that I could find in my state, that was extremely cool. I think it really speaks to how much the quality, or how much Atmos can enhance these things, especially when I compare it to listening to the album in my AirPods, like AirPods Pro, the Apple Spatial Audio. It's not quite the same because it is different technologies. So I think sometimes it can genuinely be worth it to go out to a movie theater or something like that to experience these things with really good, high quality sound systems that I would not want to pay for because they are thousands and thousands of dollars.
I can share memorable sound design experiences, and I experienced them just streaming them. I have a Dolby Atmos like speaker. I have an Alexa Studio at home. So what I think enhanced the sound design, and what I think these two shows, these two streaming episodes have really good sound design. One is the show Yellow Jackets, and the other is The Crown. I think those have really good sound design, and I think I noticed them because of the Atmos setup that I had.
I think it would be one of my first exposures to ambisonic systems, as well as some VR technology. And I think a few people in the audience today may even remember this. It was a course called Spatial Audio and XR, taught by Nicholas Pilarski and Garth Payne. So that one really explored the ambisonic dome over in Stauffer, connecting through OSC protocol, Unreal Engine blueprints to the spatialization system using a Spat Revolution, as well as just utilizing like entire world building within the VR system. So there were some incredible projects that came out of that course. And it was kind of a speed run too, because it was a single semester course with some 2-semester demands in it. So those of you that have, I think also Raj was also a part of that class, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Like, even I love that experience, and with Dr. Payne and Professor Nicholas Pulaski. So I would highly even appreciate everybody to go check it out if you have never been there, because uh, actually listening to a spatial audio on a headphones and being on an ambisonic dome does make a lot of difference. And then just learning all the back end of like how to connect the Unreal Engine and connecting it to the Spat Revolution to create such amazing experiences is just mind blowing. So I would highly recommend you guys to go check it out. Just experience that. It's so cool.
That reminded me of another course that I had 3 years ago with Garth Payne and Robert Lee Kama. It was called Spatial Audio for Martian Experiences, I believe. And that's the one, were you in it? No? Oh, okay, okay. That's the one where I learned how to implement spatialized audio in Unity. But I feel like when you're the one who like makes it happen, I feel like it leaves like a bigger impression, at least to me. Because it was just really cool just having like it was literally just a sphere object just going around. But you could hear it like, if you close your eyes, you're like, I can feel it. It's around me. But yeah.
I just remembered I am in an immersive sound class right now. Shout out Professor Mireles. And you can go to the Mixhibition, I think they're calling it. And there will be a program there called Phantom Frequencies that I was a part of, as were a few members of this audience. So yeah, check that out. I think there's also going to be, we're doing a final for that class, which will be a bunch of pieces in the EIS with the dodecahedron, if you've seen any posters for that around. So the students of that class are also participating in that. So I don't remember if that's part of the Mixhibition or not. You'll have to fact check me on that. It is? Okay, yeah, it is. So please come to that if you want to experience more spatial audio, immersive audio. That's a really great way to get into it.
All right. Earlier in the panel, you guys brought up like if we wanted to get into like sound design and spatial audio and that kind of stuff, like a bunch of different like software platforms we could use. What is your like preferred platform or like preferred way to like make sound and use spatial sound?
Since I have the mic, I'll just go ahead and start. My preferred is definitely Reaper. Now I will say I try to be a little bit DAW agnostic. I think that you can get really good results with really any DAW on the market. DAW, for anyone uninitiated, stands for Digital Audio Workstation. But yeah, so my favorite though is Reaper, and a lot of the reason it's my favorite, first of all, it's very cheap. It's there's a basically never-ending free trial of it, but also if you want to pay for it, it is $60, which is way less expensive than like pretty much any other DAW. So that's immediately a really good feature of it. I also like when you're into this spatial audio stuff, something that you run into a lot is multi-channel tracks. Because ambisonics tracks, instead of being 2-channel, which is like stereo, they can take 4, 6, all the way up to, I think, 64 channels. And Reaper lets you very easily assign in each track how many channels you want that to be, more easily than a lot of other DAWs do, so I really like that workflow. As far as like some other things that I like to use to be creative, I'm a really big fan of using synthesizers. I have one called Arturia Pigments, which is a VST, and that's kind of what I've been learning to use for everything. Sound libraries can be really useful. BBC actually has a free sound effects library that you can check out. It's very extensive. There's also a program called Soundly that all of the sound students here use. You've probably heard a lot of Soundly sound effects if you've gone to any of our installations around here. Of course, also, we use Unity. Where I work at Meteor, we use that for basically everything, and that handles a lot of the audio spatialization stuff. But as far as on a project-by-project basis, a lot of the time it's just whatever the project calls for. A lot of the time I'm not even the one that's really choosing the software that I'm using. It's more like, here, this is going to be in the EIS. We use a program called Space Map Go for it. Go ahead and learn that. And so I just go in and learn it. But what's cool about that is that they all kind of work in a similar way. So it's not too difficult to learn the workflow. Once you know one of them, you kind of know all of them. So.
Again, I'll speak to Unity because that's the one I know how to use most. But Unity, I feel like it's very easy to use for spatialized audio. Especially if you have like a little bit of experience in Unity, then you'll be good. I think just watching a YouTube video about it shouldn't be too hard. All it is just, I feel like it's even harder to just do just the regular sound design. Because the spatialization is just like drag and drop a thing that says like spatialize it. And then just adding like a head tracking thing for your player camera. And that's pretty much it. Like it handles the rest. So it's just you making your own soundscape and then adding that plugin checkmark that says like spatialize it. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Suraj?
So I feel like each audio engineers or like sound designers have their own preferences when it comes to a DWs, and I have been working with Logic Pro for a long time, but then Logic Pro is more towards music composition and production, and I've been recently started to work with Pro Tools, and I love Pro Tools like what Michael said about Reaper. Like even I work with Reaper. I personally did not enjoy much, but then I would slightly incline towards the Pro Tools for offering a lot of professional functions and parameters that one can use. Uh, and also I use a synthesizer called Serum. So Serum is more like a wavetable synthesizer that gives you a nice graph of what you are tweaking, and all the parameters that it gives for you to tweak audio is pretty cool. But yeah, so it just like you try to explore and then see what workflows works for you, and which DAW works for you well, and you can work on that. But then I would say to get started would be look for something open source like Reaper or even Ableton Live Lite as a free version, but they have slightly less functionalities and like restrictions in usage. But yeah, just like explore and then find your tools, and that's how you build. And all these tools and plugins are like a very important part for any audio person.
Yeah, I know for me personally, it really depends on what the use case is. Usually, whatever it is going to be routed through either like Reaper or Max MSP. I know not a lot of people like Max MSP, but once all your courses make you learn it for the past like 5 years, you kind of have to like it. So with that one, that really like Max MSP, that's like you build everything from scratch. So if I'm using that, it's typically going to be for an installation or something I'm building from scratch, or it's going to be used as kind of a link between applications using OSE protocol. But typically, if it's something like an ambisonic system, I'm going to use the like Reaper and Spat workflow. Sometimes I can connect the OSE to the Spat Revolution like parameters, change the perspective parameter or perceptive parameters, as well as like the spatialization, where it's coming from, where the sound is originating. Some other things, I I know creatively, I actually really enjoy this one plugin called Skydust 3D, made by Sound Particles. That one is a really awesome, like, spatialized synthesizer plugin. Very tasking on any device that you're going to use it on, so be careful. But really fun to play around with. It spatializes pretty much everything for you once you have the entire like hardware, software setup and the multi-channel like setup. So you kind of open that in Reaper. In the Spat workflow, you can kind of tell it how many channels you want that specific track to have, or how many channels it's going to really split between in the space. And it'll spatialize it for you. You can choose between if it's a group of particles moving around the space, each with like a different tonality. It's just, I could go on and on for hours just like delving into the weeds of it. But yeah, that one's like a really fun rabbit hole to dig into if you ever have the time. All right, Lydia? More questions?
I guess I was wondering, a lot of the times when I've encountered spatial audio being used in any project, it's either thought of a little towards the end or it's thought of in the beginning and we're like, okay, we'll get to this. So the moment when we do include someone who's working on audio, they don't really get to choose what's happening in the project, and a lot of times it's just execution for you. Like you said, you're picking a completely new software, but you understand the concept, you understand the properties, and you're able to implement it. So my question would be, if you don't have restrictions to resources or the concept, what's your version of a dream project for spatial audio when you've had to cater to a wholesome project? And we're not trying to specify just spatial audio, but like there's a lot more VR interaction and a lot more things. So what would be your idea of a dream project? Anyone? Or everyone?
Yeah, I think that has us all thinking pretty hard right now. I know for me personally, I said it a little bit earlier, my like ideal is that kind of like intrinsic and supplemental application of spatial audio. So of course, anything I do, I'm like kind of audio centered, or I'm thinking about audio first. But in terms of any standard project, to try and utilize it and like implement it as early in the process and also keep a consistent kind of update with that. It's really important to be able to just like bounce back between the two. Like, I think time boxing for me is the best routine, where I'm like 45 minutes with the audio, 45 minutes with the visuals. And also like differentiating between spatializing audio and the sound design process, I think is one thing that a lot of people don't consider, is how like complex it can really get when you start spatializing each individual sound. And if you want to automate it and you have it animated or automated, moving across the distance, you have perceptual factors like reverb or spread and stuff like that changing over time. That can be a huge time sink. So putting that off to like the last 2 weeks of a project, I did in my capstone last year. That got me about, a lot of all-nighters stuck in the dome over at AME. So trying to kind of figure those things out as a natural progression alongside the visual aspects is really great. So the way I might think about it is like, okay, as soon as you have like that model figured out, you tap out like a model in Blender, you put that into Unreal. As soon as you have that component done, jump over to the audio aspect. All right, figure out what kind of perceptual factors you want for that audio source or that object. What kind of sound design does that visual inspire, or vice versa? What kind of visual representation does that sound inspire? I think experimentation is one thing that not a lot of us have time for, but I think is very important within that kind of creative process. Does anybody else have anything to add? Michael?
So I can say from my experience, the two factors that are most important in whether I will love doing a project is how much time I have to do it and how much creative control I have within it. So how I'd kind of define that is I really love the kinds of projects where I'm in on it from the start. Like, I'm going to the initial meetings to decide like narrative and direction for the project and storylines and things like that. And it's something that I encourage everyone to try to do within your own projects, because oftentimes audio people will have a different perspective on things, especially because they're going to be familiar with, with a key piece of the project. I would think about it in terms of you want people who are very familiar with cinematography to be in on the ground floor of your film. Same for the same reasons as you would want that. You want people who are familiar with sound to be in on the ground floor. And you can apply that to any creative fields. And the other thing is, we say this in the sound department a lot, and probably in all art departments, you never feel done. You don't finish, you just ship it out eventually. So, having time scheduled to do things that are important to you, that can be really good. Like, I can speak to one of my Meteor projects right now. We have a project that's got like a little robot guy in it, similar to R2-D2. If you can't tell, I really love little robots. But we're taking the time right now to really specifically design the sound for him and design, a personality for him sonically, using the animations provided to us by the art team. And I think taking the time and even just having the time scheduled to do things like that is so important, because I think it really, really ups the quality of your end product, and it also ups the enjoyability of working on the product. So I'd say that's kind of my definition of a dream project, is just something that prioritizes those things. Yeah. Anybody? Yeah.
So you said dream project, so I'm guessing that implies like no restrictions on resources, and then something that specifically had to have sound also as part of like a big aspect of the experience. So I'm thinking kind of like a musical in VR that you have to like walk around. Just because like just the fact that it's a musical, it's like sound is like super important to that. And also like the fact that you're able to move around it. People are gonna have to think about like the placement of like every singer, every instrument, stuff like that. I don't know, I think it'd be really fun, yeah.
So I kind of hear two parts of your question, like what would it be perhaps content-wise, and how would you incorporate it without a limit of resources, kind of the spatial, is that correct? Okay, so from a content point of view, there are two projects. A dream project that has long been one that I've been wanting to do is a dialectical, and it essentially be an immersive learning project, and it would be a dialectical analysis of the Haitian Revolution for young people. So I would, like, if there was no limitation for budget, I would do, like, I would have the music, I would hire, like, a composer, hire someone to do the music. But there are a lot of, I think, it lends itself, in terms of the audio, to a lot of opportunities, just in terms of locale, just in terms of, nature sounds, like also being if I were to focus on, like, for example, a battle in part of that analysis, that's ripe for a lot of different spatial audio opportunities. The other one is I just defended my applied project last week. I would have loved to have that spatial, which is very much kind of like a historic narrative that intersects in time. So that would have been great, and I'd ultimately do that as like an installation as well. So those are a few opportunities for me.
I just realized I should answer content.
Yeah.
I answered so much about process. I didn't answer anything for content. Something I would really love to do is collaborate with like a metal band and go to the EIS or some similar space and do like a live sound system for them and projections for them, and basically create like a live music video kind of scenario. I think that would be so sick. So any professors that may be listening, call me.
Yeah, in my case, like I want to integrate audio with the VR experience, and which I guess like pretty much I got to work in my first semester. And but right now I'm working in a couple of projects at Meteor Studio, and then both of them have a audio aspect, and I'm happy that like we like I've been working in this project since the inception of it, and so I know quite a bit of like how this entire project is, and then I've been working in the VR development side as well. So like being more equipped to give a better audio experience, I feel, which is something that I'm excited to create and be like audio person to create those audios integration for this VR experience. And I feel like, yeah, like what I agree to what Michael said, like you need to have the necessary tools and the liberty to choose your creative works for the audio experience. So any creator would want that in their work, and I feel it's the same for audio team that they need like the clarity of like what they are creating, and the liberty to create their and put their ideas into the project. Yeah.
I did have one thing to add. I would be remiss not to mention Kima, mainly because I think Garth would come after me if I didn't make mention of it. But Kima is also a sound design slash hardware slash just about everything that you could think of wanting or needing to do with audio. That I think is a device that is really powerful that can incorporate lots of collaborative just behavior across different disciplines. So there's been so many pieces such as like a dance piece that motion track the dancers and have audio kind of capabilities or audio representation depending on movement. Things like that are really inspirational to me. So I think a dream project would also kind of involve that sort of technology where you're thinking from the learning curve, admittedly, is kind of steep, especially for me, because it's a lot of sort of programming in a very like original scripting language that you can begin to tie to so many other protocols, MIDI, different sort of motion trackers, just about anything under the sun, you know, that has to do with like a connectable technology, you can definitely connect it to something like Kima, which just opens up the creative space so broadly. So for me, I think coming from a sort of musician's background as a saxophonist and a guitarist, having some sort of frequency tracking protocols within that to inspire some sort of generated audio and visuals would be, I think, a really cool thing once enough time and effort to get that really fleshed out, especially time, because, yeah, a semester isn't enough to really delve too deep into that. But, yeah, additional questions?
I have one. So
Yes.
first, thank you all for this amazing panel so far. You've been talking a lot about spatial audio versus immersive audio. And I was thinking about the broader term of immersive audio, and I was thinking, for example, what is the role of haptics? Like haptics is like sound waves, right, that are used to create tactile experiences. I wonder if any of you who work with interactive or responsive environments, when you're working on creating the immersive experience and the immersive sound, have you ever worked with haptics together? Have you had that in your mind when designing audio? And if not, do you think there's a connection?
To start off, I absolutely think there's a connection. I have had limited experience with haptics, and I think the most traditional like sense of incorporating haptics in audio is one sub bass or subwoofers, as you can feel that is a like physiological response that you have to that audio. You can definitely see that. I know. Yeah, Dreamscape also has some. I'm gonna let you maybe get into that a little bit deeper. Speaking from my like kind of experience, I've also seen some VR spatial audio kind of collaborative efforts utilize haptics in terms of like physical objects that you can reach out, touch within the physical space that will react to a audio. So back to make mention of that XR and spatial audio course, there were some projects that could incorporate physical objects, and once you interact with those, it would cause some sort of trigger done within the engine's blueprints to cause some sort of auditory phenomena. So in a way, that includes haptics, but I know there are so many other potentials and like applications of it if we want to get.
Yeah, I know Dreamscape is really good at haptics and audio, like tying them together. Even using, like you said, audio as haptics with the subwoofer making the rumble of the experience. But yeah, even something as simple as just like a controller vibration when a sound happens can definitely add to the impact of the perceived action, as opposed to just hearing it or just having the vibration, but having them both together kind of like enhances the impact of it.
Your question brings up for me like the opportunity in the actual physical spacing of it, like haptics, like could you have a stage that actually moves? Could you have a stage or a portion of a stage that vibrates and can react in that way? So in those ways as well, when I'm thinking of immersive and like something that's big and projected or displayed on a giant screen, like in Soundstage 3, I think those are exciting opportunities in that way.
I got very excited when you asked that question because I have recently been talking with a man named Dimitri who works at Dreamscape. He is their audio lead about how they do haptics there. So it's actually very directly tied with audio because audio is how you trigger the haptics in Dreamscape. So basically what they have in, say, Dreamscape Learn, not across the street, but actually next door to this classroom, is in your chair, under your chair, they have a shaker device. It is actually called a butt kicker. And to activate it, you send a very low frequency signal. I think it's activated around 60 hertz. It's very, very low. And you send it very loud, and it gives your chair a big jolt. And you can use that in a few different ways. One way that I really like using it is if you're in like a vehicle, or yeah, that's actually a way that they use it there, is if you're in like a vehicle, then you can make it feel like there's a motor rumbling underneath you, and you can really help the audience feel like the road and feel changes in the vehicle. They're actually very common to use in racing simulators for that reason. They are also common to use in flight simulators, basically anything that has the word simulator on it. So they're a very big fan of haptics, and it makes sense because anything that you do in the real world, you get a sense of touch. You usually get a sense of impact when something happens. Something that's becoming fairly common in virtual reality spaces is a haptic vest. So you get all these little transducers in there, which are just miniature versions of the butt kicker. And if you put them all in a line and you make the vest kind of tight to the body, then you can actually simulate having, say you're in a boxing game, you can simulate a punch to the chest. Or say you're in like a first-person shooter kind of game, you can simulate kind of getting pelleted with bullets or airsoft or whatever it may be in the game, lasers. So I think that a lot of this tech is kind of in its infancy. We're kind of exploring the best way to use it right now. But I also think there's a lot of very exciting use cases for it as far as increasing immersion. Because all immersion is really talking about is, making things feel as real as possible and then using that reality as a way to enhance the experience. So I think that haptics are very, very important in the immersive audio conversation, and I think it's very exciting that they are part of audio, because I didn't know before joining Meteor that haptics were a part of audio. I thought that was a different programming thing, so now I'm just constantly thinking about haptics since I have an excuse to use them. Does anyone have anything to add?
Yeah.
Or not?
So I have some more inputs regarding this question. So I have a limited experience using aptics, but then I used aptics for creating UI and the interactions like mobile interaction and audio and aptic for that. So like if you are thinking like how aptic and audios are related, it just like beyond like 20 hertz of audio frequency, like humans can't literally hear, right? So when we take any audio that is less than that and then just like place it, and all we could do is feel that but then not hear it, and that's how like we create aptics. And similarly, like I was like trying few of those experimental things with creating an UI for mobile applications, and uh, creating aptics for mobile is kind of like different. And I say like you also like have to think about how that hardware is going to produce that. So but I'm pretty excited to do those experiment and transfer those knowledge to create any experiences. But yeah, it's a cool experience to provide for the user.
Okay, I think we ran out of time. So
Very sad.
All right. So first of all, I just want to thank everybody here in attendance today. Thank you so much for coming to our panel. This pretty much concludes it. I just wanted to also extend a thank you to our amazing panelists who offered their unique insights today. Could we please give them a round of applause? Thank you. I also wanted to quickly just highlight who on the panel here is part of our colloquium class. So I, myself, Sriraj, Jesus, and Lydia here are all within the Mixes colloquium course, and this is our panel series here. But we also had a few guests outside of the course who were willing to join us, including Michael here. One of our other guests, unfortunately, fell ill and could not be present today, but that was Celia Yang, also just amazing sound designer and just Sonmeister here. So thank you again. Please join us next week for our final panel in the Extended Realities panel series. That one is titled The Battle Against AI in Art and Technology. Thank you.